This week on The Briefing, we'll break down that big PlayStation showcase from last week, the good, the bad, and just my general thoughts. We'll discuss just how much of a statistical anomaly Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has been since its launch point. We'll run down some of the news about GTA 6, and we'll close on a gamer standpoint. Welcome to The Briefing here on The Way We Play. What this is sort of a news aggregate, all delivered to you in 30 minutes or less. The first 5 minutes are a welcome back, sort of what I've been playing lately, talking to you guys, followed by the top story, smaller news, and closing on a gamer standpoint, which is either a brief gamer review, a recommendation, or a closing word. This is all news, so if you could support me on this venture, please subscribe, like, or follow this on whichever podcast service you're listening on. With that out of the way, let's get started. Who am I? Who is this person that's talking to you? What is my trending direction when it comes to gaming? So my name is Brian. I live in the United States, of course. I'm speaking English pretty fluently, I would say. So the most recent games that I've kept up with are something like Mario Kart 8's new DLC tracks, that booster pack. But honestly, my value for gaming is not to get the newest thing. It never has been. My priority is to maximize what I already have. So, for instance, my library includes a PlayStation 2, a PlayStation 3, a Nintendo Switch, a Wii, and an Xbox One. On the Xbox One, I use Game Pass Ultimate. I get as much out of it as I can. I've played games that I never thought that I would have learned about, I think one of my favorite games from Game Pass was Flynn, Son of Crimson, I believe was the name of it. And that was a really fun experience. Just the greatness of Game Pass we'll discuss in the future, but that's what I use for my Xbox. On PlayStation 2, I have such a library from Gran Turismo 4, ATV Off-Road Fury, Midnight Club 3. My tendencies originally were racing games and shooting games. My family was very much a PlayStation household led by my dad, who was very much a PlayStation-centric guy. And so, we had a PlayStation 1 and then a 2, and we got a 3 much later. I think around 2010 is when we got a PS3. But back in those days, he played a lot of Medal of Honor. He played Grand Theft Auto. He played Gran Turismo, the Driver franchise. And so those were the games that were available to me, So some of my favorite gaming history moments are just playing or the evolution graphically of Gran Turismo 2 to Gran Turismo 3. Seeing even something like Driver 2 to Driver 3, and the beautiful evolution of graphical improvements over time. It has been remarkable to see over my lifetime. But overall, again, my priority is not, hey, I got to go get the Xbox Series X. I have to get the PS5. I have to get the Steam Deck, No, I just enjoy trying to catch up on things I missed out on. For instance, I did not play PlayStation platformers. I missed out on that. The only PlayStation platformer I had as a kid was on the PSP, and that was Daxter. And because that was a launch game, or not a launch game, that was a pack-in game, so I missed out on all the Sly Coopers and all the Jak and Daxters, and and I missed out on so many titles there. So my value is in, hey, what were these games like back then? What can I play now that is just as interesting to me? And what can I find that's so interesting? Some of my, for instance, I have like Arctic Thunder on the PS2. I have Time Crisis 4. So I have like arcade games that, it would take like multiple coins and an incredible cost to go out and buy over time at an arcade, but when you can play them at your house, it's very fun. It's very exciting. So again, my enjoyment of games skews all over the place, and I hope that I am a host that you will find has interests in the gaming industry that you can connect with. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Let's kick things off with that big PlayStation showcase. This was apparently going to be like E3 level, right? That was the perspective from a lot of insiders that this was going to be a huge deal for audiences to catch up on. It would give us an idea for PlayStation for the next 12 to 18 months. Just a massive, massive presentation. And so, what did we get? Well, so this PlayStation Showcase ran just over an hour. It had a bevy of upcoming titles. It even had hardware, which was some of the biggest deals usually on a showcase. But we'll run through the entire presentation, right? So the critical standouts for overall, right? You have that Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, and watching that, some people said they already knew about this. I had no clue about this, but the reveal of his face was awesome. The reveal, the video itself is cool, right? You also have the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection. Spider-Man 2 had the largest presence by far at this showcase. You reveal someone like, they revealed Kraven the Hunter. You had some great new gameplay elements with the symbiote. And so you're going to see just this awesome evolution of gameplay when it comes to this sequel that apparently we don't have a release date for yet, but we got over 10 minutes of gameplay for. Ubisoft gave us information about Assassin's Creed. I don't know how many of you guys are up on Assassin's Creed, but, it's gone all over the place. My favorites are way, way back. Like, I'm an older guy. Like, I'm not 50, I'm only 26, but, I prefer the earlier Assassin's Creed by a mile. Either way, it's coming out October 12th. We got Final Fantasy 16 gameplay and Ghost Runner 2 gameplay. Ghost Runner 2 looks pretty cool. Story mode information on Street Fighter 6 that was already known, but, good to see. I will say we had some indie games in there, but the Plucky Squire was the only one to me that looked really interesting. The way that they toned the trailer was very much in a Little Big Planet type of way, and I think that it will serve that audience well. I just think the gameplay looks interesting. The idea and the concept looks like it'll be a fun journey, and I don't know if it said that it was on PS4, but it definitely just looks like it'll be fun, and good on them. Good luck to them. I did see that people liked Neva, but to me, that was just pretty much like a Mononoke type thing. Like, you see wolves, you see a princess with a sword. Toward the end of the presentation, before we ended up getting to the Spider-Man 10-minute gameplay clips, I will say we got hardware. And we have this brand new handheld device called Project Q. It was announced, they spent 30 seconds on it, and they moved on. It is essentially an 8-inch screen. It is not a super high, it is not the most beautiful screen you're ever going to see. It is a standard LCD screen, but, it gives you portability from PlayStation for the first time since the PS Vita. Obviously, you have the phone option as well, but when you want to talk about just going out and doing streaming-only gameplay, this will be the device for you if you're willing to shell out that cost. They spent actually more time on headphones, which was funny, and I thought that was a terrible idea. But, all right, what do I think overall, though? My biggest issue is, it's not that it was just, a lot of people thought this was too much CG trailer stuff. This is something that you do when the PS5 is brand new. What I thought was just the pacing was bad, right? You had like 3 sci-fi fantasy games in the very beginning, back to back to back, very badly paced. And then you had, it just didn't flow well. Especially since, again, a lot of it was CG, but I thought the issue was not that you missed gameplay. The issue was that the pacing was bad. I thought the priority should have been you disguise and tease Project Q through the entire presentation. This is the first time we get new Sony hardware in 2 years, 2.5 years, and people would be very excited. There's a lot of people watching that are very excited, and you have to sell this system to me. What is valuable about Project Q? You spent 30 seconds on it. I thought this was one of the lamest introductions to a new PlayStation hardware device ever, because even the PlayStation Vita TV, when it was revealed at E3, had more time given to it, right? At TGS, when they revealed the PS Vita with all of its colors, they attempted something more interesting. And they slapped this thing on visually, and it just did not deliver. I thought that it would have been much more interesting in the way that they sort of transitioned into VR games if you started out the presentation with a tease of the screen of this device, and you then start the presentation. And every time you transition, instead of using the sacred symbols, the square, the triangle, the X, and the circle, you instead go back to the hardware itself. You continue to tease the hardware itself. What is this? Why is it interesting? And then, in the last few minutes before Spider-Man, if you were to format it that same exact way, you give us battery life. You got to give us statistics. You don't just throw out this thing and say, oh, here it is. Like, it was very half measured. And I think that's what it seems like this conference was like. It was a half-measured conference that did not put its best foot forward. And I think that's why people were very disappointed. It's not just about the fact that there was no Sucker Punch announcement. There was no Naughty Dog factions for Last of Us. It was the fact that this was just half-baked in general. And it was a mostly third-party experience. And I think that that's not good for a showcase. A showcase is made to be top level, best of the best, PlayStation exclusive mostly, and it definitely was not. I will say that you got to give it, by the way, to Insomniac. I did not mention them earlier when I was talking about Spider-Man, but they are the most valuable developers for Sony in the PlayStation 5 era by a mile, right? Sure, you can look at Horizon, and you can look at God of War, and you can look at these developers that are developing those. But when you talk about valuable Sony IP, 2020, Miles Morales, 2021, right? Was that 2021 or was that 2020? Either way, every single year, if not outside of 22, I believe you've gotten, was that last year? You had Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart, and you had Spider-Man, Miles Morales. So you have a lineup of games, 3 titles that will be within the first 3 years of this console, and no other developer from the first party is doing it at that rate, especially for the quality that they're putting out. So again, A+ on Insomniac. Sony, I think, just needs to get themselves together in terms of what is my message? What is the purpose of revealing Project Q so early if you don't have any information here? You do that at the end of the year showcase, maybe. You do that before November if you want to do another showcase in October or September. Get people hyped about it. But to just go, it was 30 seconds, like, kind of lame. Also, it's streaming only, so, but we'll talk about that later. We have 2 Nintendo stories here. I'm going to start with The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, because this thing is a statistical anomaly in its first 3 days. It was blowing records out of the water. It has sold 10 million copies in its first 3 days of launch. I mean, that is historic. And I want to put that into perspective for you. The Last of Us 2, again, massive Sony sequel. People hyped for it, waiting for it, excited for it. On PS4, by the way, on a system that was already well developed in its install base. Took 2 years to get to 10 million copies. Here's another one. The Kirby franchise, in its entire history up until the very end of 2022, sold 40 million copies from the 1990s, the beginning of its franchise, to the end outside of Return to Dreamland, sold 40 million copies. This game has sold a quarter of all the Kirby franchise titles in history up into 2022. That just tells you how big this is. And if I'm Nintendo, I am not fast tracking anything other than Legend of Zelda when it comes to a cinematic experience. I'm not fast tracking anything other than that. If I'm working with Nintendo, if I'm working with Universal Studios, I'm working on a Legend of Zelda section. If I'm working with Illumination Entertainment, I'm working on a Legend of Zelda film. Moving on to theatrical, like we were talking about just now. In the same trend line, gaming's biggest mascot has now reached a new bar. So obviously the Super Mario Brothers movie was huge, has been huge, and momentum has cooled a little bit because you just have these juggernaut movies like Fast and Furious 10, like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, The Little Mermaid, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is coming next weekend. You're just talking about movies that are going to chip away at the momentum that Mario had in April. But you gotta say, this thing now is at $1.27 billion as of this weekend. The film is now the fourth highest grossing animated movie of all time. It crossed over Pixar's Incredibles 2 last weekend and is about $15 million away from getting to Frozen 1. By the way, in total of highest grossing movies overall, this stands at number 20. So the momentum of this movie has been nothing short of historic and just great for the world of video games. It, by the way, is already available to buy or rent online. So the question is, how much further can it gain when it comes to its monetary momentum when you can already view it online? There's going to be a physical release very soon. So at some point that will cool. And again, Spider-Verse 2 is the first big animated movie post Mario to hit theaters, so you're probably going to see a large amount of that last stretch will be this weekend and maybe this upcoming weekend. But after that, you have a pretty packed summer after that, filled with Spider-Verse, Transformers. Kids will be moving off of seeing Mario. As good of a movie as it is, I thought it was a very good time, a lot of fun, very enjoyable. But when you think about just Illumination and Nintendo working together on this, they've got to be happy. And of course, we already know that there is the Donkey Kong movie in development. I still don't understand why Donkey Kong was the immediate successor. I don't even look. Seth Rogen was fine, but again, if you're gonna fast track anything, you fast track Zelda. Zelda's a massive brand over at Nintendo. If you fast track anything else, I would say something like Kirby, just because of how you have a cute character. You could do something really fun with Kirby, and I think that's the best case scenario. But Donkey Kong, you wonder, is it even going to come close to the numbers of a Mario movie? Because Donkey Kong is relevant, but is he relevant enough to push that stratospheric level, or is this something where it makes like half that number? And are they fine with half that number? Either way, for video game movies, we had Sonic the Hedgehog during the pandemic, right? Or right before the pandemic. It swept up all the audiences before the pandemic came out, or released, I should say, and shuttered everything. And it made a good amount of money, but this is next level money. And again, you got to be proud of how good the Super Mario Brothers movie is in terms of quality and how much money it has made. Let's talk about this GTA 6 potential news. So Rockstar Games' parent company Take-Two revealed in an earnings report that the 2025 fiscal year will have several groundbreaking titles that will set new standards in the gaming industry, and many presume that one of those groundbreaking titles is the long-awaited Grand Theft Auto 6. Of course, the fact that they're putting a bullet point on 2025, not next year, not this year, they're saying, hey, this is heads up, 2025 is a big deal, just gives you all the confidence in the world you need to say, okay, likely this is their target area. And, I think we cannot underestimate how valuable Grand Theft Auto is. It is a juggernaut in the industry. I still remember when it first came out. I still remember how big of a deal it was for so many people. And for me as well, I grew up and I saw, we didn't have a PS2 at launch. So my dad had GTA 2, and, I remember the top-down look. and it just was not my thing. But when they moved over to GTA 3, I didn't see GTA 3 much in my household. And I think my dad did that just because I was so young at the time. But I remember Vice City. I had seen Vice City a lot. It was a very big evolution for the time. And then you move up to Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and that was historic. That was huge. Everyone had San Andreas when I was a kid. Everyone wanted to play San Andreas when I was a kid. It was a massive game, and that was when it reached the stratosphere, I think. San Andreas moving into GTA 4 on next-gen titles. And GTA 4, again, was a title that, my family kind of missed because we didn't have a PS3 until about 2009, 2010. And after that, my dad kind of moved off of video games for a while. But when GTA 5 came out, I was very excited. I made sure to, get that within the same year. I was very excited, put so much time into that game, just having fun, all that stuff. And what it is now, whether you're talking about role-playing, whether you're talking about the online ecosystem, and how far it's held up in its value for Take-Two and for Rockstar Games, you cannot overestimate or underestimate just how valuable Grand Theft Auto 5 is to the mainstream audience. And so with GTA 6, you just wonder how much bigger could it be? Can it succeed in doing what GTA 5 did, which is be a mainstay for 2 generations. Remember, this launched on the PS3 and Xbox 360. It eventually jumped over to PS4 and Xbox One, and then it re-released again on the PS5 and the Xbox Series. So you have now 1, 2, 3 generations that had this game, and there was nothing in between except for Red Dead Redemption 2, which was amazing, of course. But that's it. And, Rockstar Games is just one of those developers that is held in high regard. They had that controversy a few years ago about their workplace and how much stress they were putting on development. But people want this game. And more people care about the game coming out than I think almost any title. People were very upset when the PS5 was revealed. And GTA 5 was the game that was in the showcase. People were very surprised about that. So, GTA 6 will be an absolutely historic moment in gaming. This week on the Gamer Standpoint, we're going to go with a closing question. You can ask a closing question, thewayweplaypodcast@gmail.com. That's thewayweplaypodcast@gmail.com. The question is, what video game property and animation company should team up and fast-track something together because of the Mario movie's success? So the canceled one that would have been great was Sony Pictures Animation and Sly Cooper. What people don't realize is that Sony Pictures Animation and PlayStation are almost in 2 completely different wheelhouses. Even though they're within Sony, they are not within each other's connection. If you remember back in the day, Ratchet and Clank, the movie, when it came out in 2016, was pushed off to another animation team. It was not made by Sony Pictures Animation at all. But Sly Cooper was much more interesting, potentially, just because of the story and the sleuthiness of the character. And so that would have been a lot of fun. But the most valuable, by a mile, is Kingdom Hearts and Disney Animation Studios, right? Disney needs this, right? Disney Pictures Animation has a huge image problem. It likes to, portray things that don't necessarily need to be portrayed. People just want a Disney movie that is a good, entertaining time. They don't want to be preached to. And, Disney seems to put a lot of politics into their content. Whereas, that's why DreamWorks had so much success with Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. And that's why the Mario movie had so much success, was they were just enjoyable, fun, simple movies that were more classic in tone and didn't try to preach politics. So Kingdom Hearts, Disney Animation Studios, Disney should learn from the value of doing a partnership like Illumination and Nintendo. If Disney were to work with Square Enix, you think about Kingdom Hearts, it's sold over 36 million copies in its lifetime. It already ties into existing Disney property. The story has a lot of suspense. It has a lot of drama. Anime is huge, by the way, so the Japanese inspiration is going to be only more and more helpful for something like that. And you think about, let's say it wasn't a movie. Let's say it was a streaming series. This could be as big as something like Harry Potter for WB's Max streaming service, just because of how interesting the story goes, how the story beats Carrie, the journey, the characters. People would lose their minds. And, again, if it's animated, that all the more better for it, right? People would be very excited to see a Kingdom Hearts series, and it could run for multiple seasons. So if you're looking to strengthen your subscription service, Kingdom Hearts is the way to go. I know they already have Percy Jackson on the way, and that is a very anticipated series, but by a mile, by a mile, Kingdom Hearts would be very helpful in getting new people onto Disney Plus for a while. All right, guys, this has been the briefing. Again, this is a new venture, so please, wherever you are, like, subscribe, or follow on whatever service you're on. Again, I appreciate the support. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more.